Hello. It's so good to see you all. Thank you for hanging out. So whenever I chat with folks, I have a couple questions that I hope you will keep in mind. The first is how fantastic Colorado's elections are, right? We automatically send every active registered voter a ballot in the mail. We have great in-person options. We have same-day voter registration. So if you've moved, we're not going to disenfranchise you, right? It is a fantastic place to be a voter. And the second thing I want you to keep in mind is in a moment where President Trump is threatening every aspect that I just listed, can we afford to have anyone in charge of the 2028 presidential who's never run an election before? So my name is Amanda Gonzalez. I'm the clerk and recorder in Jefferson County, and I have run elections for nearly 500,000 voters, and I'm the only person in this race that's ever overseen an election. Right? And I'm so proud to tell you that under my leadership, Jefferson County had the highest voter turnout that we have ever had. I shouldn't say this in Denver, but we are not the largest county. Y'all are a little bigger than us, as is El Paso. But last year, we had more individual voters turn out than any other county, including the ones that are bigger than us. Just saying, it's a little bit of a competition. But my experience goes beyond the clerk and recorder's office. I am an election attorney, and prior to running for office, I was the executive director of a nonpartisan voting rights nonprofit called Colorado Common Cause, where I wrote the law that doubled the number of drop boxes. I wrote the law that created automatic voter registration. Our legislators are important and courageous people. But I was always the nerd behind the scenes, making sure we actually got the policy right. And the job of Secretary of State is not legislative. It is the democracy defender in chief. Right? And we're in for a fight, right? We have a fight ahead of us in the next few years, and we know that. But I'm a fighter. Folks like me do not usually get elected in systems that were built for the rich and full of special interest. Right? I'm from, I say normal, I don't know what that means. I'm from a really normal family, other than the fact that they are Republicans. They're pretty normal. My dad builds houses for a living. My mom works at Costco. I was the first in my family to go to college, and then I was the first in my family to go to law school. And with your help, I'm going to be the first Latina Secretary of State that Colorado has ever had. Yes. And look, I can get real nerdy, and I think we will have some time for questions. So I hope we get a little nerdy. I think this is a nerdy crowd. But democracy and the right to vote is not academic for me, right? This is the best tool that we have in our toolbox. Voting is the best tool that we have in our toolbox to actually realize the world we want to live in, right? In a functional democracy, we have clean water and clean air because that's what we all would vote for, right? In a functional democracy, we don't have ICE kidnapping people off the street. In a functional democracy, we're not worried about going to the movie theater or churches because we know that we would have responsible gun laws. Right? That is the future that I'm fighting for. That's the future that I know is achievable. That's why I'm running for this office. I know we can do it. I know we can make history, but I need your help. So let's chat. I have much more fun chatting with you all than droning on to you. So any questions about either me, the office, or voting in Colorado in general? Like I said, happy to get nerdy. Yes.
Okay, you may not want to share this, but how did you get the great number in Jeff Code to vote?
Of course I want to share that.
How did you bring them out?
Yeah, so I don't think it was any one thing. A couple of the things that I am most proud of. The first is that I created a first of its kind advisory group in my county that's focused on accessibility and modernization. And we had 40 members to start. Our youngest member was 15. Our oldest was in their 80s, all different political parties, right? Like, I believe in diversity through and through. I think we make better decisions when we have different voices around the table. I've been a small business owner. I've run nonprofits. Shouldn't admit this in crowds, but I have made some boneheaded decisions because the table wasn't broad enough. right? When you have other folks around the table that can help you make good decisions. The other piece of that is that, I don't know what you all think, you've known me for 5 minutes. I think I'm delightful. And I think that I am a great messenger on information about voting. But the reality is I'm not the best messenger for everyone, right? And a 60-year-old Republican is probably going to listen to his Republican neighbor more than he's going to listen to me. So we brought her in, and she was part of the group, and she can tell him, here's accurate information about elections from someone that he trusts. And so I think that was really important and gave us more reach into the community. The other thing I did is I hired full-time community engagement staff, right? Some people feel really safe and really welcome in government buildings. Not everyone. And so we asked ourselves the question, where are the people that might not otherwise have accurate information about voting? And so we were at every high school and every dispensary and every laundromat that would take us. We did more than 80 events in 2024 to get out into the community to give people who needed it accurate information about voting. And I think those things really helped. Yeah. They're making you get your steps in.
From the front to the back.
There's a good chance that the SAVE bill will pass.
Don't put that in the universe.
And let's assume it does. What steps are you prepared to take in order to ensure that voters here have the ability to vote in compliance with that bill, should it pass?
Yeah, so to be clear, we are going to comply with the law, right? So the ability to regulate elections per our Constitution rests firmly with Congress, right? So if they passed a law, we have to follow the law. And then the states, right? I don't know that I think it's going to pass, but I think it's a valid question around how would we deal with it? Because not only is the SAVE Act about what kind of ID you have to show to vote, right? You would have to show an ID every time you vote. The bigger deal about it is it's really a voter registration law, right? And so who can register to vote becomes different. And you would have to have kinds of IDs that most people do not have, especially if you are someone, which is disproportionately women, who have changed their name in adulthood, perhaps due to marriage, right? You would have to have a valid ID like a passport in your current name, right? And so it would mean wholesale changes to registration in Colorado. The things I would think about if we had to change that system would be, how do we make it as convenient and equitable as possible, right? So if we had a large scale change, that probably does mean we are standing up a lot more in-person vote centers, right? In Jefferson County, I stand up 38 of them. I think we'd need at least double, right? We would have to then do large scale communications outreach in multiple languages to make sure that people understood the changes and how to comply. And we would have to have proactive outreach that would happen early, right? And we have to have vote centers and these outreach centers that I think we'd have to open early that are in places that everyone can get to. You all have a vote center here, is my understanding. Keeping that would be really important. Making sure that people can access the in-person services that they would suddenly need, even if they need transportation and don't drive, right? So those are the things I would think about, but it would mean large-scale changes for Colorado. Call Congress, fight like hell. We can't let this pass. Yeah.
So, if you listen to the president, his administration, there's a reasonable possibility that they could send ICE officers and people like that to the state during the elections and actually have them near the polling stations, just like they threatened to do it at the Super Bowl and so forth. So what kind of things could we do as a state, especially someone in the position you want to take, in order to deal with that situation that people are not afraid to vote?
So the first part is that Colorado's current system, as we saw during the pandemic, is critical because it has flexibility, right? So you probably already know these stats because you are super voters, right? But 95% of Coloradans vote the ballot that was mailed to them, right? Of that 95%, about 75% drop it off in one of our secure 24/7 drop boxes. And we also have really great in-person voting options that are available for anybody. I think they're most helpful for folks that maybe have disabilities or language access needs, but anybody who wants to vote in person is welcome to do that. We take 16 different kinds of IDs when you vote in person. Having a system that has all of those options is critical, right? Because if one goes down, for whatever reason, ICE agents or otherwise, we have other options. Right now, you can drop off 10 ballots for a total of 10 ballots per election for you and your neighbors, right? So your neighbor doesn't like going out in the cold and it's snowing that day. You're a trusted person for them. You can drop off their ballot, right? I always advise folks never give your ballot to a stranger, right? Maybe only give it to people that you trust. But we might need folks that feel safe going to drop boxes to make sure that their neighbors who don't feel safe can still get their ballots in. The other thing is there's 68,000 ICE agents total in the country. He cannot put them in every state. That isn't a reason that we shouldn't be contingency planning, right? So even in my current role, I've told you I stand up 38 vote centers. I think there's a chance that we could have agents at drop boxes. I'm actually more worried about wholesale changes at USPS, right? So depending on how the election calendar falls, we usually mail ballots around October 10th. I'm worried about October 11th, all of USPS shutting down for 2 weeks, right? Those are the kinds of plans that we are actively thinking about. I'm sure Clerk Lopez in Denver is doing the same thing, but it is what I'm already doing in Jeffco, right? How quickly could I stand up more vote centers? I not only oversee elections for Jeffco, I also oversee 5 motor vehicle offices. Now, this would be really annoying if you had to deal with the tags to your car that particular week, but we are looking at certifying our motor vehicle employees as election judges so that if I needed to shut down 4 motor vehicle offices and turn them into VSPCs pretty quickly, we could do that, right? Being nimble because we don't know exactly what's coming at us, but we know something is coming at us and we have to be prepared. We have to protect the right to vote for absolutely everyone. I am also over recruiting for election judges. Anybody served as an election judge before? I thought maybe. Yeah. If you haven't and you're able, I suggest it. It is one of the things that gives me increased faith in humanity because every piece of our election is handled in bipartisan teams. To be clear, some of the jobs, very boring, but you want it to be boring because it means it's all going smoothly, right? But every piece of processing your ballot is done with people of 2 different parties. Your ballot is never alone with just one person or one party. I am hopeful that we are having this conversation next year and you all are calling me a little bit of a conspiracy theorist because 26 went super smoothly and we had no problems, right? That is the goal. And if we are going to have to be nimble, if we are going to have to stand up more more vote centers, if we're going to have to stand up ballot pickup locations because you can't rely on USPS, I'm going to need a lot more election judges. In Jeffco, I already hire and train 900. And so we will be recruiting a lot more in the hopes that we don't have to use everybody, but we have the people power if we need it.
Oh, here I come. Let's pass it.
I'm Mary. This is off the voting issue, but as Secretary of State, what are the main things you'd like to get accomplished?
Yeah. I mean, I know we want to talk about more than voting, which we absolutely should, but we have to be honest that the chief thing is going to be protecting the democracy, especially in 2028. And it is going to take all of us to do that. Beyond that, right, the Secretary of State also oversees business licensure. So if you've ever had an LLC or a small business or a large business for that matter, you register it with the Secretary of State's office. I've been a small business CEO, and I was an HR department of one, and a legal department of one, and a marketing department of one, right? And so remembering to keep up with that business registration, I'm not gonna lie, I paid some late fees. We should be making it as convenient and understandable as possible for people to register and maintain their business. And we should be doing that in all languages because immigrants are a huge part of business owners in this community and really important. So we should make that convenient, easy, accessible. Another thing that I would love to improve is the Secretary of State also oversees campaign finance. And so, right, Citizens United and its progeny are a nightmare. And our Supreme Court is also a nightmare, right? So they won't be overturning Citizens United anytime soon, right? The backstop that we are supposed to have is transparency, right? So we need to make campaign finance understandable, right? There's a former reporter for the Colorado Sun, and Sandra Fish, you may be familiar with some of her writing because it's fantastic. She literally wrote code to export the campaign finance data so that she could easily understand it and look at trends. You shouldn't have to write code, and you shouldn't need an advanced degree to understand who is trying to influence your vote, right? So making that system much more accessible, much easier to understand so that you can actually understand and follow the money would be really critical.
A question I have is, with the possibility of ICE being here, how might that affect our immigrant community as far as their voting? And do you fear that there's a possibility they will be picked up by ICE if they, stand in line to vote? And are we prepared for that? And I mean, do we just let it happen? Sorry.
Yeah. I just want to acknowledge how bonkers it is that we're having these conversations, right? That our neighbors and friends and family members have to be worried about their safety, right? And to be clear, you have to be a U.S. citizen in order to vote, but we have seen that the terror campaign is not only against immigrants, it's against many of us who they think look like immigrants, right? Whatever the hell all of that is. My grandmother was an undocumented immigrant. And I know what's at stake when our government turns its back on people that are trying to make a better life and who are our neighbors and our friends and our family members. And this campaign is about terror, right? And I think that includes voting. And it is the reason that we need somebody who's going to fight like hell in this office. It's the reason that we all have to protect each other. It's the reason I'm going to harass you to be election judges. It's the reason that we're going to need join up with community organizations that are organizing people to, right? We saw that in Minnesota, right? Who's saving each other? We are, and our neighbors and friends. And so if we had a campaign of terror during the election, do I think it could influence voter turnout, especially in immigrant communities and communities of color? Yeah, I do. And we're going to have to organize to make sure that doesn't happen.
How many fraudulent votes were cast in Jeffco in the past 20 years?
None that we know of. So a couple facts for you. The first is we do not even open a ballot. This is statewide. We do not even open a ballot until we can verify the signature that's on it, right? There's a reason that unfortunately sometimes newer voters sometimes get their ballots kicked out more often. And to be clear, we're not kicking out your ballot, right? If we can't verify that the signature is yours, we're going to send you a letter and say, hey, we're not sure this is you. We need to make sure it's you, or else we are not opening this envelope, right? And so maybe when you are 18 years old and you're really excited about registering to vote, you filled out your form, right? And I was Amanda M. Gonzalez, right? And then when I signed my ballot, it was on the back of my steering wheel before I put it in the drop box, right? If we only have one signature on file for you, those aren't going to match. And so we're going to send you a letter saying, hey, we're not sure this is you. If you don't respond to that letter, we're unable to open your envelope. We're unable to count your ballot. The other thing that happens is you end up on the list of people that we send to the DA's office. And the DA investigates every single one of those that we're not sure that this envelope is from the person it says it's from. Most of the time, It's people say, oh, I thought the election is over, so I just didn't respond. Another small percentage of the time, the person says, yeah, my husband left his ballot and he forgot to sign it, so I signed it. Right? We're like, no, you can't do that. Right? That is mostly what happens. If there was ever actual fraud, it would be prosecuted. The Heritage Foundation, bastions of progressive thought, right? Never racist ever, did a pretty extensive survey all across the country, and they published it. It's on their website. And they found some, even according to them, which I usually doubt the Heritage Foundation data, but on their website, you can see that there's something like 20 looking at 20 years of elections. That's millions of votes, right? It is statistically non-existent.
No.
I had a campaign finance question.
All right. That's fine.
Right now, the limits for an individual person to donate is $1,450. And I don't understand how so much dark money can get into races when an average person can't even donate $1,500. So I'd like you to speak to that, and also, can something be done to raise that amount?
And it depends on the race. $1,450 is for the bigger races. If we're talking about your House rep at the state level, it's even lower than that. But for anyone that would would like to help me protect democracy, $1,450 is the max. So we call it dark money because it's not. When you donate to me, you say, I am Ann Smith. I'm donating to Amanda. Here's my profession. I report all of that in the Secretary of State's database. You all can look up at any given moment who has given me money, right? And try and figure out, is she beholden to them, right? You can figure out, hey, are there a bunch of shady people that have been giving Amanda money and I'm nervous about what that means in the future? That is the idea behind transparency, is you should be able to figure out who's trying to influence your vote and your politicians' votes. And so for that reason, I actually think not being able to just buy politicians is a relatively good idea, right? We don't have people in Colorado that are taking $300,000 checks from an individual or a corporation. What is happening usually is these independent expenditure committees, which don't actually coordinate with the candidate, right? They are doing their own thing, and the Supreme Court says that they can absolutely do that, and they are not having to disclose in the same ways. And so when we say dark, it's because it isn't as transparent. You can tell that Ann Smith donated to me. You can't necessarily tell who Coloradans who love puppies who paid for this mailer that says all kinds of crazy things. You can't always tell who they are. Some of that is really tricky with what we can do given the Supreme Court and what they've said the limits are. We could increase limits in Colorado, and it's an interesting philosophical debate. Until very recently, school boards did not have limits at all. You could go buy a school board member if you wanted to. There were still tons and tons and tons of dark money in school board races. And so I don't know that I buy the argument that dramatically increasing what you can give to individual candidates is going to alleviate our dark money problem. But I do think transparency would help.
Thank you so much. It's late
Yes.
for us and for you and our other candidate. So,
Thank you.
and I also really, it's so hard for these candidates who are running statewide or serving in their current jobs. So we really appreciate Senator Gonzalez and Clerk Gonzalez. I don't know how that happened. It was totally coincidental, but I know.
And we can have a fun debate later about how it's supposed to be spelled. I just want to say thank you. It has been really nice going around the state, and I will say that these rooms are often full, in 2026 because people give a shit. They care about their neighbors. You all are the doers. You are the ones that say, I want my community to be as good as it can be, and I'm willing to do the work. You all could be home watching Bridgerton right now, and you are not. You came to a meeting about democracy to improve your community, and I am just so grateful to be in the fight with you. So thank you for doing this.
It's a good group.